in the interest of time, we're going to get started. We have some very exciting companies from our portfolio that are going to present to you their business model and their capital needs 2020. And we try to bring to you a sample across sectors, stages of growth, and geographies to showcase a little bit what impacting is really when you're on the front lines. So by way of introduction, AlphaMundi has completed 130 transactions in impact investing in the last 10 years. We've invested $55 million in 40 companies across Latin America and Africa, and mostly in microfinance and fintech, agriculture and food, renewable energies, solar and biogas in particular. And separately from our investment operations, we have a charitable foundation that is also running a grant program of technical assistance to both advanced pipeline and portfolio companies to help them de-risk progressively and attract more investors. Our mission at AlphaMundi is to scale up solutions for the SDGs, so we really are keen to build market leaders at a national level and whenever possible, help them expand to new borders and new countries. So without further ado, we'll have a series of presentations. Members of our staff are going to give a quick oversight on the relationship between AlphaMundi and the company that's presenting. Then we will have 10 minutes per entrepreneur for them to present their business model and 5 minutes of Q&A with the audience. And really, this is, we want to create an open book concept and space for these sessions. So whatever questions you have on financial performance, on impact, on operations, please feel free to ask them. The idea is really to grow the familiarity between investors in Europe and the champions of sustainability that you have seen here today. So thank you very much to all our entrepreneurs for joining us this afternoon. And we'll get started with Nicolas. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to present Esteban Velasco at the right. Esteban is the CEO and co-founder of Sempli, an online lending platform for small businesses in Colombia. Sempli has been in our portfolio since 2018, and we also have co-investments in Sempli, some equity co-investments with AlphaMundi's debt investment. They were founded in 2016, and they have operations in 9 cities across Colombia. Since their foundation, they have disbursed more than $28 million in loans, US dollars in loans, through 549 operations and 365 clients. They have an internally developed system, an online lending platform that is able to disburse and grant loans to SMEs in Colombia in 72 hours. So please welcome Esteban. They just closed an equity round of $8 million, including players such as Oikocredit, Incofin, the IDB. So please welcome Esteban.
Well, thank you very much for being here today, and thanks to AlphaMundi for the invitation. Nicolas did it very well, so perhaps you should come here. No, well, I'm Esteban Velasco. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sempli. We are the leading online lending platform for small businesses in Colombia, so we are definitely a fintech. Can I have the... So Colombia is the third largest market in Latin America, second largest in Spanish-speaking Latin America, just after Brazil and Mexico. And this is a 50 million population country that has about 2.5 million small businesses in the country, which is actually the opportunity that we are targeting right now. And those businesses represent almost 60% of employment and 30% of GDP. But the bad news is that small businesses in Colombia only represents 9% of financial institutions' portfolio. So there's a big opportunity to close that gap. So 8 out of 10 small businesses are actually underserved by financial institutions, leaving them in a weak position to grow. So they have, most of them have to go elsewhere and take loans at very high interest rates from their friends, their close relatives, or perhaps on the streets at very high interest rates. And even though that happens, most of them actually decide not to grow, which is dramatic not only for them, but for the economy as a whole. So, and almost 80% of small businesses in Colombia will close after their first 5 years of operations. So there's also a problem of those who are not served, but what happens with the few that are actually served by financial institutions? They do it through a very frustrating borrowing experience. So what happens is that normally they take from 10 to 12 weeks to get a loan, and if they do it, if they're lucky enough to get a loan from a financial institution, they do it through a very frustrating borrowing experience, not only because of the long time it takes, perhaps from 10 to 12 weeks, but also because of the hidden costs and unflexible collateral structure that the bank asks. So out of those 2.5 million small businesses, almost 1.2 million are actually legal incorporated businesses, so you have to take out the moms and pops type of businesses that are out there. And this is that we all know is the missing middle. So perhaps in Colombia and any other country in Latin America, you could find a very interesting amount of money targeting micro businesses, which are perhaps companies that have revenues less than $100,000 a year, or you could have a very interesting offer for those companies that have annual revenues above $1.5 million. So what happens in the middle? So this is the missing middle. And we have measured that in Colombia there are about $700,000 that never received a loan before. So this is a huge opportunity for us. So we created Sempli a couple of years, almost 30 months ago. And since our inception, we built Sempli as a digital-oriented platform. So normally the company or the entrepreneurs fills up a form in 3 to 5 minutes through a 3-step format. And afterwards, we get that request, and through a 3-day analysis process, we are able to analyze and to process the information through our risk assessment process, and then make the disbursement. And this is very disrupting compared to what the banking industry is doing right now. We normally do tickets from $10,000 to $100,000 approximately. Remember that this is the missing middle, so those are small businesses, not necessarily micro businesses. And the term goes from 6 up to 36 months. So the use of proceeds and the way they're asking us to lend to get our money is normally 60% of the time because they have an expansion project. They need something to grow, even if they're buying some fixed assets or they're opening a new location, or they need to hire more people because they want to enhance their portfolio. Or about 30% of the use of proceeds that we perform is for working capital needs, especially because they need to release inventory or accounts receivables. And almost 10% of the cases is because they want to substitute the debt that they already took with their family or their friends at a very high interest rates. So this is what we do. We have allocated since our inception almost $28 million. So we're growing very rapidly. Our portfolio size right now is about $16 million. And we have a proprietary model of Sempli, of credit analysis that we call Sempli Score, and a proprietary model of intelligence and learning analytics that we called Mila. And we name her Mila, like an analyst or credit officer that helps us not only in the process of analysis, but also as a compliant, taking all the compliance, which doesn't slip, which doesn't make mistake, and that helps us a lot in terms of learning analytics. And the process, and Mila is learning from the analytics that we are executing right now. And perhaps in a couple of years, Mila is going to be able to reduce the information that we are analyzing, taking into account, of course, the testing that we're doing with the good loans and the bad loans. So this is how our technology looks like. So we strongly believe that fintech is about experience, and experience definitely is about being able to deliver our value proposition in a very rapid way, but also being transparent enough, and that's part of the brand and the naming that we have, being transparent enough to have a single pricing, which is our interest rate. So we don't charge any cost for the credit analysis or for the use of the platform that we normally see in other online lending platforms. And an experience, just to give you an example of how we measure experience. In Colombia last year, Deloitte conducted a survey about NPAs. I don't know if you're familiar with the index, which is Net Promoter Score. And the banking industry got a number of 34. We executed the same index last quarter, and it was, in our case, 79. So 79 simply, and the banking industry in Colombia is 34. So that gives us confidence to continue and growing and leveraging the operation. So we have fundraised over $26 million. Half of it in equity and the other half in debt. So we received, and we were very fortunate to receive the money from the Inter-American Development Bank, Oico Credit, Incofin on the equity side, and other private investors, and also to leverage the operation with AlphaMundi, the Inter-American Development Bank again, Bancoldex, which is the second floor bank of the government of Colombia, and Triple Jump from the Netherlands. So if you look at the composition of our debt providers and equity funders, it's almost 60% of the money that we've received that is here in Europe. So that's one of the reasons why we are here today. We want to enhance our relationship with European investors. And our funding strategy is very clear. So if you look at our solvency ratio right now, which is about 50%, we have enough space to grow by getting new loans, new loan facilities. And with the path that we currently have, we are going to be fundraising about $25 million for 2020. And given also the growth that we're currently having. For instance, last month, we allocated almost $2 million only in September. So that is the path that we're getting. And of course, we strongly believe that we are having a very high impact on social and responsibility debt. And for us, small businesses are a strong driver of economic growth. And by allocating loans to this segment will give us also the confidence to grow simply as a company. And perhaps in a couple of years or 3 years, we will be here stating that we are not only the first digital option for small businesses in Colombia, but also one of the top 5 loan providers in this segment in our country. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you. We'll open up to questions. We have time for 2 or 3 questions. Thank you very much. Yes, Paulo?
Hi, I'm Paolo, impact investor and also investor in AlphaMundi. Thank you. I was really pleased to see that slide with all the different fintech providers. I'm curious, what's the relative importance of doing traditional underwriting and looking at cash flow projections versus, I saw some boxes were about the character of the entrepreneur or assessing the entrepreneur herself. How do you weigh the importance of these 2 factors?
Yes, I mean, traditional, if you look at our simplest core model, so we have about, I would say that 30% of the information that we gather has the same approach of the traditional banking industry. It's what we call structured information. So we got information from our credit bureaus, from the tax agency, etc. But the other 70% or 65% approximately comes with the information that is unstructured. And that's part of what we created in our Simply score model. So we are able to understand their psychometrics. So we normally have a script in the video conference call that we record that gives us information about their willingness to pay first, and second, their business model, and why, if they have been, they have had a bad scoring with the credit bureaus, why that happened. And so we're able to analyze that unstructured information. And one tool that is helping us a lot is the social media scoring that we execute through the information that they reveal on the internet.
Next question, if there's any. Yeah, Verle.
Hello, my name is Veerle Berbers, also investor in AlphaMundi and on the board of the AlphaMundi Bastion Fund. Just wondering how you handle defaults, and you don't, do I understand well that you don't see the entrepreneurs, you do it all on your platform, nobody is seeing any personal contact, or also not during the process if people are defaulting? Maybe you can say something about that.
Two things. So the first thing is that we do have a video conference call, and we received some pictures, and during the video conference we asked those are the small businesses, to show their facilities or offices. So that's one thing. Of course, you're not in front of them looking at their eyes, but you're visualizing if there's a good opportunity there. So one thing. Our delinquency ratio right now is about 5% compared to 10% in that segment in Colombia. So we are outperforming the banking industry. And our default rate is very low right now. It's even below 1%, but it's going to increase. We are a young company. Our cohorts, perhaps in 6 months from now, we estimate to have a default rate in 1 to 2% approximately. And how do we handle that? We hire external lawyers that are experts in collection process, and so that's part of what we do right now.
Sorry, add-on question. What about the interest rates? You said they were for everybody the same?
There's a range, depends on the risk. So in Colombian pesos, the average is 19%. In Colombia, there's a cap, which is about 28% currently. And the most expensive interest rate that we have done is about 24% in Colombian pesos.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I think we'll leave additional questions maybe for the end after all the other entrepreneurs have presented, because we want to be mindful of everybody's presentation time. Just one comment on fintech. In our portfolio, we see it as a different component than microfinance, but it is equally impactful because it can grow fast, and through the very heavy data-driven technology, you can also measure your impact very precisely. So we're very keen to promote fintech, which is really quite recent in Latin America, in part because a lot of countries have only recently adapted the regulatory frameworks to enable fintech on a larger scale, while fintech is already quite well established in Africa. So in our portfolio, we've invested in a number of fintech companies, and we intend to do it in the future. You know that our investors in the fund have a co-investment right, and typically those who use a co-investment right are more seasoned investors, and very often they will go into the debt opportunities alongside the fund. When a co-investor decides to go in the equity, it's because he's really convinced about the growth opportunities of the business. And a number of our co-investors have invested in equity in Simply because they believe in the fast growth potential of that company, and also this company's ability, which is very important for us, to preserve its quality of operations, its quality of impact, and its quality of financial returns as it grows. All right, we'll move to the next presentation, and it'll be introduced by Lina from our team in Colombia.
Hi everyone, let me check. You can handle it. So please help me welcome next Carlos Andrés Holguín. He is the CEO of Insotec, a microfinance institution in Ecuador that was founded in 1980. That's focused on providing loans to micro-entrepreneurs and smallholder farmers in rural areas in the country. Insotec has been growing for the past 5 years strongly, growing from 12,000 clients in 2014 to 15,000 in 2018, and from a portfolio of $25 million to $50 million. We have been supporting Insotec since 2015 because we believe in the work they're doing and the impact they're generating. So please welcome Andrés, Carlos Andrés.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. It's a big honor for us to be here today. And share some of the information that explain you our work. We are working every day to transform lives in our country. Today I want to show you our country, the problems that we have, and some of the work that we are doing to solve these problems in the field. Okay. Our country is not easy to, you can't be bored in Ecuador because every 5 or 3 years you have volcanoes, we have earthquakes or political problems. But we learn how to survive in this environment. The problem is not environment, the problem is that you need to develop the tools to work in the field with the problems. For now we are working very hard in have a good economy. We depend on exportations. It's a very open economy. You can see there. 100 years ago, the main product for exportations is the cacao. Maybe you know in Switzerland the very good chocolates that you have maybe are using our cacao. Then we develop another product, bananas, and now it's incredible. We have the main product is the shrimps. And exactly, Ecuador, the main product for exportations in Ecuador now are the shrimps. And we are working with them because millions of Ecuadorians are producers of these products. Flowers is another product. The very beautiful flowers that we have are produced in Ecuador. Nevertheless, the fiscal problems, we have a good balance in our trade commerce. And it's important for us because Ecuador, we use the dollar. We don't have our own money. But it's a good thing that we have dollars because we can receive dollars and we can pay dollars. And people can plan for the medium term their investments. Okay. Here you can see that the total of our GDP is $100 billion. And 10% of this total is related with agriculture and aquaculture. 10% of the total, but maybe 20% of the total of the population are related with agriculture. And we need to understand, because there's the problem that we have about the poor people. We are 17 million people there. And 60% of this total is in the age of work, from 19 to 65. It means 10 million people. And only 40% of this total have a formal work with a social security, with a salary. 60%, it means 6 million people are working in an informal way, okay? And 20% of them maybe are in the agricultural sector, 1 million people. The problem in this sector is the productivity in the access to the markets, okay? That's why in Ecuador, there's a lot of people poor, because the productivity and because of the access to the markets. The question is, how can we help in this market because the formal banks, they can't lend money to the informal people. And that's the place where Insotech is working now in the field, okay? Okay, Insotech was founded 40 years ago by an Argentinian guy who came to Ecuador to make a company to do investigations. We didn't start lending money. And he discovered this reality. A lot of people with no knowledge to have a good productivity out of the system, and they start doing projects in the field to develop these people. At the end of the 90s, he said, okay, but the people needs a loan. They know how to do the job, but they don't have a loan. And the IDV makes the first program for provide loans to our clients. And from 2001 to now, the loan portfolio grows from 0 to $57 million, and now we have 18,000 clients. Most of our loan portfolio is in the rural areas. How can we do the work to increase the productivity and to provide our clients access to the markets? We connect parts. We have good alliances with big companies that can buy the products for our clients. And they provide them technical assistance, and they buy the products with a good price and with a good price and with a technical assistance. We can solve that two problems at the same time. Access to the loans because we provide the loan, and productivity because they receive technical assistance and a good price for their products. But the other problem that we discovered is that they don't have health. And we develop a product, microinsurance products, to provide them a doctor if they have problems with their health, not only for the client, also for their families. Because of our methodology and because we have a gap in interest rate, we need to have a very hard work in the field, visiting each client in motorcycles because they need to go maybe 1 or 2 hours from the branch and develop all the financial information and also social information about our clients. And because of that, we have a very good indicators of our quality of the loan portfolio. 2.7 in Part 30. It depends on the moment of the economy. The Part 30 is between 2.5 and 3.5. You can see there the rural portfolio is 71%. And if it's not rural, it's related with the rural activities because we are connecting the farmers with the commerce in the city. And we finance also people in the cities who are buying the products of our clients. Our write-offs. Okay. Internally, because we are a small company, but we have 20 branches now. We started 5 years ago with 7 branches, and now we have 20 branches. We need a system for governance. We have our board members from many countries, from many of our lenders. Now we are receiving as a subdebt 4 of the very important companies in Canada, in Germany, Incofin from Holland, and we have 20 lenders. And we need to develop a very strong board group and very strong management team. We have a German guy in finance, a very good CEO that he's working in the field 20 years, and a very strong group in the management team. That's why we have a triple B plus by microfinance ratings from Italy. IDV provide us a very good qualification of our governance, and 5 diamonds in mixed in the mix certificate of transparency. And our financial statements are reviewed by Deloitte. Because of that, we are receiving more lenders every year. And we want to grow with the lenders, but in that moment, we need to think different for the future. We need maybe to convert our institution in the next 3 years to a small bank, specialized in financial inclusion, because we need to have the money, local money in savings. It's better for us to grow with this money than grow only with lenders. Yes, I'm finishing, yes, thank you. You can see there our impact. 64% of our clients they doesn't have high school. It's interesting because in some cases we have third generation. The fathers they don't know how to write, and now their kids are in the university, and they are our clients also. 69% of our loans are allocated in poor places. And we are making these workshops everywhere in these neighborhoods, very poor. And if we discover that, for example, they have milk, we teach them how to make cheeses. If they are producing cacao, we teach them how to make chocolates, or how we can connect them with the company, big company, to buy their cacao. Everywhere is different in these workshops. Okay, and we are attending 2,000 medical attentions per month, because in the field they don't have public or private attention, but if they work with Insotec, they can call the doctor and they can solve the problems in their family. Okay, for the next year, here you can see to finish our presence in Ecuador. We need to grow only in the rainforest in the future, and maybe in the future we want to go to another country also, because with our model we can impact lives also in maybe Colombia or maybe in Central America. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I must say that Insotec in our portfolio is always paying on time, always reporting on time, very transparent with any issues that we have. And so for us in microfinance, it's difficult to add value because in general, globally, it's a sector that's been overcapitalized. It is still a very good anchor in your portfolio because it reduces your risk in general. But we are very focused in our microfinance allocation to companies that are high impact, focused primarily on women, focused primarily on agricultural areas where there's still a high level of vulnerability to poverty. And Insotec really checks all the boxes and has been doing that for years. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Is there any question on Insotec? Yes, Fernando. Oh, and Mike? Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Hi, I'm Fernando from Brazil, also an investor in AlphaMundi. And I'm curious to know, I find it really interesting, the new products you're developing regarding insurance. Is this connected to the microfinance? Like everybody who takes a loan, the insurance comes bundled, or is it a different product? And also if you have insurance for climate for the farmers.
Thank you, good questions. First, we have a good partners that provide to our clients the products related with health. We invite, for example, to Pan American Life to review our clients and to provide to them a good offer. At the very beginning, they say, no, they are informal, we don't want to work with them. We say, wait. They say, well, how can they pay us? No, they can pay you because in the moment that we disburse the loan, you can receive by us a small amount, but you will have 18,000 clients. And they understand our work, and they are offering our clients very good products in health. Okay? That's the same thing in insurance and also in medical assistance. Now, for the agriculture work, we are working with Zurich, because Zurich arrives to Ecuador and they say, we have the climate and the insurance for agriculture. And we're developing with them a very good product that allows to our clients to be protected in case of problems in the field. You know that the exposure is high in the agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question? One last one before we move to the next presentation. We're good? Yes, one from Rosa.
So, how is your kind of credit rating model different from one of your colleagues?
Yes. I'm learning a lot of from Esteban, because they are working in another segment. Their clients are bigger than our clients. They are more formal. You have a lot of information because they pay the taxes, they have financial statements, everything. In our case, we need to go to the field and build the financial statements in the field with our loan officers. That's why we have the schools. Loan officer schools with all of, it's like university. In Insotech, you can have a career starting like a loan officer, and you need to learn how to complete information in the field, to project information, the social performance indicators, and also at the end to have a committee to understand the business and to provide a loan to the client with the knowledge that you can't over-indebt the client. And the loan for them are to help them, not to have the problems in the future. The best thing that we can do is to have the amount for each client very, very good. Not too much, not the enough amount for their business. And they in the future can grow in every cycle. It's a different model because we need to prepare the information in the field. We don't have formal information of them. It's our methodology, maybe our success also.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to have, thank you. And by the way, for your expansion to other countries, you can count on us because we've had a productive relationship now for many years, and we're happy to give you that support. So our next presenter is Martin from Kiwa in Ecuador. He'll be introduced by Arthur, who's a member of our team in Colombia. And I'll just say about Martin that we met in the early days of his company, and he's one of these men who gives perseverance a very good name.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I will introduce you to Martin. Martin Acosta is the CEO of Kiwa, a food company that produces vegetable chips made of raw material purchased to small farmers in Ecuador and Peru as well. It processes its raw material into chips in its own production facility in Ecuador and sell it in more than 30 countries over the world. The company experienced quite a significant growth between 2017 and 2018, more than 150% growth. AlphaMundi did its first loan to Kiwa in 2017, followed by 3 other loans in the years after. So, Martin, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. So we do chips. We do, this is our bestseller, our original product, still 60% of our sales. And these are all naturally colored chips. So we use 12 raw materials, and we source ourselves from low-income farmers from the Pacific coast all the way to 3,500 meters above sea level in the Andes. So now we are in our first round of equity, raising equity for the first time. And so I'm going to go through each one of these points. So basically, we work directly with low-income farmers in 8 provinces out of the 22 of Ecuador. Then we bring that into our facility where we have BRC and a total of 10 quality certifications and convert them into these chips. And then we export to many markets around the world. We created our own sustainability model called direct trade, and that's what the last logo means. So we work with 11 raw materials. The most challenging ones have definitely been the native Andean potatoes, which were 2 potatoes that I'm going to talk more in a little bit, that are right in the middle. And we have developed many SKUs down the road. We used to work with pillow bags, and then this year we made the innovation of switching into the boxes and the canisters. And particularly for e-commerce, we see a lot of potential with the boxes. And also that will help us get into flavoring. Okay? We're actually closing a deal with Tajín from Mexico to do plantain chips with Tajín, which we're all very excited. So these potatoes, the ones that I was telling you, oh, by the way, this is a real picture. We took them in the field maybe 3 years ago. And when we went to visit them, they started putting those hats on us. Of course, they didn't fit my head, but the pictures, I mean, the potatoes, you can see how they are when you slice them already in the fields. And these are not just potatoes, they are superfood. Okay? They only come from the Andes and need to be harvested above 3,000 meters above sea level. At those heights, the antioxidants start kicking in. So when they merge, they create these colors. So we have 2 varieties, and in terms of antioxidants, they have 3 times more than red wine and 3 times more than green tea. So they are really a superfood, and then we converted this product, the native Andean potato chips, which have won several awards at international shows like Anuga and Cial and Good Foods, and also in terms of social responsibility. We actually were able to share our story last year at the World Potato Congress in Cusco. So Kiwa, we took the bestseller, which is the vegetable mix, and we took the main competitor that we have in this category worldwide. And then we started seeing that we had many benefits. This wasn't intended at the beginning, but it just came along. One of them is the shelf life, which is 12 months compared to 6 to 9 months. But then we have the cleanest label in the category. So we don't put any colorants, any additives, nothing. It's purely natural. So for example, all our competitors in this category, the beet chips that they do, the beetroot chips, are sweet potatoes and then are colored with beet juice or other things like that. So we have the cleanest label in the category, and certainly in terms of calories and a number of things, we are among the better ones. So we are in an interesting time. It's a category that keeps growing. It's growing 10% every year, but mostly in the US, we see a lot of potential. In fact, 91% of the consumers in the US have said that they are snacking at least once a day. And basically, we capture all the trends that are going on in the market. Well, non-GMO, organic, kosher, gluten-free. But also, we are very sustainable. And not only our clean label shows it, but also our program that is behind what you see normally in the package. And that is a slide that pretty much shares our story with our social responsibility model. So every year we organize, or every 2 years we organize events with our farmers. We bring them to the plant. We are providing them continuously with technical assistance, with seeds. We've worked with a number of partners in the development area, like the International Center for the Potato. And AlphaMundi definitely has stood up there as one of the main assistance during this during this growth. We've also worked with Stanford, for example, developed a tool that allows potato farmers to harvest much cheaperly. Our growth in the last 2 years has been mostly because we finally opened for private labels. Okay. Among our clients, for example, we have Walmart in the US, and that has created significant growth. We are now profitable since last year, and we see a lot of potential mainly in the US, but also in the Middle East. Scaling has helped us for sure. We are actually thinking that if we had more financing, we could do even better because we could negotiate better with our suppliers. These were our sales in 2018. So the US has become our #1 market. In the Middle East, for surely Saudi Arabia is our main customer. In Latin America, we are in like 6 countries, but it will soon be 20 countries because we're going in through with PriceMart, which is like a Costco in Latin America. And Europe is only 3% of our sales. We have a warehouse in Rotterdam from where we supply to all these markets. This is us around the world. There's a little mistake there. So the Paraguay picture is really a USA picture. But you can see here, this is all money that comes from our own distributors. Okay? They are the ones that invest in the brand and making sure that we get the right marketing and promotional strategies in their markets. We have made a lot of changes in our management structure in the last year. We're now well positioned to start growing. Our team includes a guy that is probably the main potato expert in the country, Rodrigo, with a master's degree in Holland and 17 years working for Frito-Lay and so on. We have our own production facility. Last year we doubled our capacity, in parts thanks to AlphaMundi. And we're currently at 50% capacity, so we have a ways to go there without investing in more machinery. We are fundraising. We're looking for 2.5 million, mostly to grow in the United States online. But we also need to support our distributors worldwide and reduce our production costs. So we have identified enough machinery to do this. So yeah, we hope you can help us grow. We have enough. Well, we're already selling here in Switzerland. You can find us at the International Labour Organization, at banks like Lombard Odier, and at Globus. But if not, I also have some samples over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. A couple of questions from the audience for Martin and his expansion plans. If it was all clear, Paolo? Yeah. Sean? Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. Are you willing to focus exclusively on chips, or do you have other products in mind, any expansion or any other product in mind? That's it.
So we already have, I'm sure you can hear. So we already have other products. We have a very strong pipeline because we need to start diversifying and fast because some of our distributors are asking for us for more products. So we initially took the potatoes, remember they were purple and pink, and we made mashed potato puree. So you can have purple mashed potatoes at home. That was the first one. Then we were doing a spicy sauce because our distributor, for example, in Chicago wanted to complement this. We are also being requested for chocolate. So we see some potential, diversifying in that way. We're also developing internally plantain croutons, or like squares. And we're also going to do longer plantain chips. So we still have a ways to go internally, but whenever a distributor requests us, this happened since last year, we're also developing new products specifically for them that we are using co-packers for.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm really curious on the environmental impact part. Can you give us an idea of how potatoes compare to other starch crops like rice or other grains?
Sure. So when we started, we I actually have a slide that talks about this. That's not here, but I could gladly show you. So in the case of the potatoes, normally potatoes use like 50% fertilizers or 40% of the total cost of the production cost are fertilizers. So since these are indigenous potatoes to the Andes, they require less. It's around 17%. Okay. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that we saw that instead of putting fertilizers 3-4 times during one harvesting season, we were only using once. Okay. So our costs in terms of have gone down, but also our environmental impact. And since we have all these certifications like BRC, a number of those, we need to make sure that we keep these well aligned. So we only use, green fertilizers or FDA approved, because we're also audited by the FDA in the States all the time. So we've made sure that all our environmental impact is as little as possible, and the big issue has been our work with palm oil. So to reduce that, the first thing we did was we're also doing sunflower oil, and we're going to start working with coconut oil. Okay. And even with palm oil, 100% of our supply comes from Ecuador. Okay, it's not from Indonesia or Malaysia where the real issue is. And our supplier is RSPO certified, so we are also RSPO certified. RSPO means Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil, which is the highest you can get in terms of palm oil, really. We're also moving into organic palm oil. Okay, the organic field has grown in the last year a lot for us, mainly in the US. And in terms of logistics, we are planning on investing in packaging machinery. We're using co-packers in the States so that our freight will go from from what we are moving today with 4 containers will be moved with 1 container. Basically, if we start packaging abroad, we will stop exporting air, which is what we are doing right now.
We'll take the 2 questions at once. There was one from the lady and one from Christian up there. Yeah. They're passing you a mic on your right.
Thank you. Bettina Prato from IFAD. So my question is primarily about sort of the relationship between the company and the farmers that you're sourcing from. So if you could just say a few words about how you developed your sourcing your supply chain at the production level, and then related to that also whether you are also working to serve the more of a local market or just specializing on exports.
Very good.
And Christian, your question as well.
Yes, so just a small question also regarding the environmental impact. I'm a bit concerned about the wrappings. The plastic wrapping on the product, yeah. Is that biodegradable? I mean, or is it because we see in Europe more and more we're concerned about the plastic wrappings that go into obviously the garbage. I saw that you have the solution to do it in paper and cartons, but most of the products you've shown are still on plastic wrapping. So I'm just wondering if how quickly are you going to transform this, and what is your objective towards that?
Very good. So I will answer in the same order. So one of our competitive advantages has been developing unique supply chains. Okay, unique supply chains. So for this, we have had to become experts on seeds and everything that goes along. So for example, with white carrots, which is very similar to parsnip, we had the blessing from the USAID. So they helped us identify the farming association that we started working with, and then we developed the whole thing. And in total, we have 12 supply chains. I would say that 8 or 9 are properly developed. For the remaining 3, we're still using sometimes intermediaries. For example, for the orange sweet potato, it's still been rough to get it going, and we've been on it for 4 years. But that's something that stands out from us. So we are the only ones that have been able to export the white carrots, the 2 native Andean potatoes. One of the plantain chips that we use comes from a particular plantain that is, we call it golden plantain. So it's a very yellow and crunchy plantain. So we have 4 or 5 that are unique to us. And what we do is we work with the farmers and we provide them with a stable market at predetermined prices. So we buy the entire crop, basically. And we are sending one of our technical farmers to visit them once every 4 or 6 weeks, depending on where they are. And then, yeah, we provide them with technical assistance and ongoing support. We've also provided them, thanks to a project with the Inter-American Development Bank, with direct financing. The second one is, in terms of exports, our internal market is only, our sales inside Ecuador are only 3%, okay, of our total sales. And that has happened because of a number of things, but first of all, we haven't been able to find the right distributor in Ecuador. And we don't want to do it, you know, we don't want to set up a distribution company. And the companies that distribute Pringles and the like and premium products, you know, are focusing mostly on imported products. So we are mostly focusing in the US, where we have our operation. We have 2 warehouses, one in California, one in Chicago. We have our brokers, we have a sales team, you know, that is working very well. But yeah, the idea is to definitely double our sales in Ecuador within the next year or so. But still, it's a very, very niche market. It's a very niche product for a small market. And in terms of the pouches, these boxes, I'm not sure. Oh. I mean, this has been an ongoing problem, and we haven't been able to identify or move away from aluminum foil. But these pouches are not going to be very efficiently only in terms of logistics, but will be biodegradable. The cartons are biodegradable, and inside we only have a plastic transparent bag that is very thin. So it's well protected here, and the use of plastic will be minimal. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring business model and plans. So next to present is, I believe, Peter Njonjo from Twiga Foods out of Kenya. And he'll be introduced by Diana from our team in Nairobi.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana, as Tim said, and I'm happy to introduce to you Peter Njonjo, the co-founder and CEO of Twiga Foods. Twiga Foods is based in Nairobi, Kenya, and essentially what Twiga Foods is trying to do is tackle the audacious goal of food security in Kenya and the wider East Africa. Now, as many of you know, the food supply chain in Africa is quite fragmented on the demand and supply side. So Twiga Foods is coming in with significant infrastructure and technology to try and tackle that goal. Now, we've had a great relationship with Twiga Foods. We invested in the company in 2016 with a small loan of less than 500,000, and we've been able to grow that exposure 10 times over in the last couple of years. I'll stop there because I'm not the entrepreneur. Peter, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Okay. For those of you who are curious, Twiga means giraffe in Swahili, and soko yetu means our market. So just a little bit about myself. I spent about 21 years working with Coca-Cola in about 40 markets across Africa. So I kind of understand the informal sector or the informal distribution of FMCG or product or commodities in Africa. And we've leveraged a lot of that thinking in how we've built Twiga. But getting on to the business, who are we and what's our purpose? So for us, Twiga is about using technology to aggregate retail demand in African cities to provide low-cost access to better quality food. Now, and I'll give you a little bit of context why this is very, very important. And for us as a company, we really anchor ourselves around this purpose. Now, we're solving a $300 billion problem across sub-Saharan Africa. This is how food is produced. Essentially, a lot of it is with smallholder farmers. And some of these smallholder farmers are poorly capitalized, They really don't have modern ways of producing food. Efficiency is very, very low. Cost of food is very, very high. Wastage is high. So essentially, this has led to a very, very high cost of food in our markets. Just to give you some context in comparison, Kenya, consumers spend about 55% of their disposable income on food. That means that if you're having a significantly higher food inflation than the average inflation in the country, you're essentially sucking resources from other sectors of the economy just for people to continue feeding themselves. If you look at South Africa, that number is 16%. It's a significantly lower amount of money people are spending on food. Sub-Saharan Africa, the average is about 44%. In the United Kingdom and across Europe, it's about 8 to 10%. So again, with markets like Kenya spending 55%, this is equivalent to what consumers who were spending in the US on food 150 years ago, which means that in most of Sub-Saharan Africa, we've really not had the impact of commercial production of food and the benefits that come from scale in terms of day-to-day consumption. Now, but when you ask yourself why this is the case, we realize that a lot of it is actually driven by fragmentation of retail. So in markets like South Africa, you have 60% of retail aggregated around a few supermarkets. About 6-7 supermarkets control 60% of retail. In markets like Hungary, Europe, you'd have about 80% consolidation of retail. When you have that level of consolidation, what happens is that you're able to build very efficient supply chains from production all the way to retail. And for example, if you look at most of investments in agriculture in the developing markets, it's companies that are producing to export to Europe. And these companies are extremely efficient. Why? Because they have aggregated orders and they're supplying to very, very few players. Now, if you think about the case of Nigeria is 98% fragmented, Kenya is about 90% fragmented. So think about a city like Nairobi, 6.5 million people being supplied by 180,000 individual retailers. So when you look at that level of fragmentation, there's really no ecosystem for somebody to then invest in agricultural production and have an addressable market. And this has led to the perpetuation of the smallholder farmers who essentially don't have scale, and neither do they have the ability to invest, for example, in irrigation infrastructure. Right now, climate change is one of the biggest issues that we're facing in Africa. This year, we had little rain. Last year, we had too much rain. So it's becoming impossible to plant as a farmer and produce efficiently. So things like irrigation infrastructure, things that the smallholder farmers cannot afford. So when we look at this, I think we have a very, very clear idea in terms of the size of a problem that we're solving and why this problem continues to perpetuate itself. And that's why when I started with our purpose, we see ourselves as a way to aggregate informal retail. So this essentially, I'm going to spend some time on this, but this is essentially our strategy in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So the way, as I mentioned, is that we see ourselves as a technology-enabled aggregator. And what we're doing is that we're taking retail demand, and then we use that purchasing power to start organizing efficient supply chains in food that allows them to start providing better quality and lower cost food to consumers and customers out there. So we see ourselves as having three big broad strategies. The first is around lower cost. If you're going to have consumers spending 55% of their disposable income on food, you have to address the cost of food. And we see this as having three broad work streams. The first is around low-cost sourcing. And low-cost sourcing essentially has to do with how food is produced. So we've worked with players like International Finance Corporation, IFC, who are also investors in Twiga. And what we're trying to do is establish off-balance sheet financing facilities for farmers. We just closed on a $30 million facility. And what this will allow us to do is to start providing farmers with access to capital to start investing in their farms and capitalizing those farms. Key thing around priorities will be irrigation infrastructure. A lot of irrigation that is supplying food into the local markets is really not irrigation-led, so that's one of the biggest priorities, and also some form of mechanization to increase the productivity. Second thing is around last mile. Think about serving 180,000 customers in a city. It means that, your average drop size in terms of transaction is $25. So if each transaction is going to cost $25, and how do you then organize your logistics to ensure that you can then serve all those customers in the most cost-effective way? And we've actually, our first use case in artificial intelligence will be in terms of how we're doing our last mile logistics, because now we're able to take into account things like the state of our roads, the volume of product that you're dropping to a customer, the weight of that product, how far those customers are from each other, and it's allowing us to start optimizing our last mile distribution, which is a big, big issue in terms of food cost in markets like ours in Africa. The third piece is around efficient material handling. Why material handling is very, very critical is in most markets, you're losing about 30 to 50% of your products to post-harvest losses before the product even makes it to the market. And a lot of this is just due to poor handling. And what we realize is that, with us focusing on better handling of our produce, we've reduced our post-harvest losses to about 8% without any refrigeration, which is a significant delta from where the market is. And that allows us to start passing those benefits to the retail with lower prices. And that's starting to create the traction that we're seeing with a lot of our customers. The second thing that is very, very critical is what we call value add. Because we're sitting on a lot of data, and a lot of this data that we're accumulating is data that is not available in the market. We're now having data around what are retailers buying, and how much are they buying of each product, and how frequently are they buying that product. And what we've seen is that we've been able to put together a fintech product for retailer financing. And with this retail financing product is that we're not lending off our own balance sheet. What we're doing is that we're putting this data together and connecting banks to our platform using APIs, and essentially they're able to then lend on to our customers. And what we do is that owning the platform, more or less, you're just charging a little toll fee to allow them use a platform. But essentially what it does is that it really de-risks the lending for the banks, because now they have more data that they did not have as far as the lending is concerned. One other thing that we're also doing as far as value-added services is concerned, this is a recent development, I'd not put it in here, is that we're looking at microinsurance. Because one of the things that we realize is that there's a lot of things that happen to small retailers that put them in that cycle of poverty, and they can't snap out of it. So for example, most of their structures are semi-permanent. So you're always having issues around burglary, you're always having issues around fire. And when you have those issues, essentially every time they face a peril, their working capital is destroyed, and they have to more or less restart their lives again from scratch, rebuilding themselves. And what we realize is that you can actually create a simple microinsurance products that allow them at least to protect their working capital. And I think that for us is very, very critical. And the other thing also we're looking at is also around health. Every time they fall sick, then what happens is that you have to take money out of a business. And when you take money out of a business, in essence, what happens is that you then have to you've depleted your working capital and have to start again. So one of the things that we're doing also is, as we roll out that product, is to ensure that we can ring fence the working capital from for our retailers. The other piece is around food safety certification. Right now, we serve about 3,500 customers a day, but we have to source from 17,000 farmers. So food safety is a challenge. All right, because then you really don't know where the food is coming from. So again, that's a piece that we're really focused on in terms of traceability, convenience. We have m-commerce. We are also focusing on delivery times. And underlying all this, of course, is technology, how we've built our architecture, people. We're really focused in terms of our engagement and our culture that we're building, and we have our values. We own our work, we keep it simple, and we're good. So, and we have potential to scale food distribution in the cities that we operate. As I mentioned, it's all about low prices, customer service, attracts more retailers, and we have efficient suppliers, and we keep on moving on this flywheel. And that's essentially been driving our growth. Today, we're based in Kenya, and we're looking at expanding in some of these markets. That's Ethiopia, Eritrea up there, Tanzania. That's the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, and also the French West Africa. So, and we have a clear framework in terms of how we're going to drive this expansion. And this has been our financial performance. We did 3 million in 2018, 2019, 9 million, but essentially that has grown exponentially. 2020 will close way ahead of a 23 million target. Chances are significantly higher than that. And we see ourselves as getting to about $500 million of revenue by 2025. So good thing is that we are ahead of these projections as it stands, and we see ourselves in a steady state as a company that will be sitting at about 12% EBITDA margin. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I think you'll probably have lots of questions. One question over there from Carol. Yes? And we'll try to take 2 questions at a time. So if there's a second one, you can get ready.
It's going to, yeah, okay. It's going to turn on. Hi, Peter. I'm Karel from Triodos, and also happy to be a financing partner of Twiga Foods. I think in the beginning you mentioned that one of the issues is that there's a fragmented value chain, amongst others, in a market like Kenya. Once you get to a concentration of power within a value chain, the risk is also that the ones producing the foods, the farmers, are getting demarginalized and not getting their fair share of income in the value chain. So I was wondering if you could share a bit how you ensure that the farmers are also part of the positive development that you're creating in the value chain.
The way we see our business in the long term is more of a platform, where you'd have farmers having access to market and you'd have retailers being able to source their produce. From a retail standpoint, if it's concentration of power by having a few big retailers, I don't think we're going to see that in the market right now, because I think in development of retail in Africa, and I think unlike other markets, you've had small retailers, big box stores, and now you're having e-commerce. I think in most of Africa, you may see the small retailers. We may skip the big box stores space and actually just move to e-commerce with the small retailers. So that means that you will have lots of retailers enabled with technology, but again, sourcing from a multitude of farmers. And for us, what we're doing is that we're actually creating an ecosystem that removes the friction from commerce. Because right now, if I'm a farmer and I don't have access to market, I can't get debt to finance my operation and to grow. At the same time, if I'm a retailer and I can't access the product, then it also limits my ability to serve my customers. So what we see of ourselves is a platform that sits in between and removes this friction and allows a free flow of commerce between these parties. So we think we will be an enhancer to how the economic model works around food, more than anything that would disempower a particular segment of players.
Just time for one more question. If not, we'll move to the next. Yeah, Fernando? Okay.
Well, thank you for the presentation. A question about your financials. I see that you are projecting that your capex is going to go down, and how this is going to happen. I would like to know, like is it strong?
So in many startups across the continent, what happens is that you don't have a supportive ecosystem when you're starting a business. So you have to build the ecosystem yourself. But what you realize also is that as you achieve scale, you then start working with partners who are able then to take off a lot of the assets off your balance sheet. When we started off our business, we had to buy all our trucks. We had to buy all our assets. Today, we have partners who are coming to us saying, you know what, I'm going to take off all your trucks from your balance sheet. You don't need to buy any more trucks. I'm going to help you with warehousing. So you're finding that there's lots more players who are coming on board. And the way we see it is that we will start accessing services on an operating lease perspective instead of owning the assets. And that's a significant transition that we see happening in our business down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. All right, so we have one more presentation, and then maybe we'll have a few minutes to have a conversation with the different panelists. Samir, are you coming on stage to present Sun Culture? Okay, and he'll be introduced by Judith, who's also a member of our Nairobi team. Thank you.
Hi, yes, I wanted to keep a bit of the suspension of the empty chair that's been standing here all that time, is to keep everybody energized for the last speaker of today. So Samir, please join us here on stage. Samir is the co-founder of Sun Culture, which is a solar irrigation system developer and distributor. They're based in Kenya, but they also sell through other distributors in other markets in Africa. They are the recent addition to our portfolio. We are this close to signing the documentation, so it's not a done deal yet, but we've said it out loud now, so. Exactly, and I'm very happy to sign. The reason why we want to work with Sun Culture is that solar irrigation that they're providing to smallholder farmers is really helping them cope with the unpredictable rainfall, helping them to increase the productivity, but also a lot of smallholder farmers have cattle. They are able to give them more water, improve the milk production, and it's really an essential system at household level, just to have access to water. So we're seeing a lot of potential from the impact. But also the systems they provide are really affordable because they provide them on credit. And this is now where our investment is coming in, that we are able to provide the company the financing to basically pre-finance their sales on credit. And a final word is they have also been a recipient of technical assistance from the AlphaMundi's Foundation. So also, I think, a very nice example of how we've been able to already work with a company and then now top it off, let's say, with a working capital facility.
Thank you very much, Judith. Good afternoon, everybody. I looked on the schedule. I knew I was coming after Peter, so which is helpful because there's a lot of context that he shared that I no longer need to share. So I decided to change up my presentation a little bit, and I know everyone in here is very interested in impact, but when we talk about all the SDG goals, sometimes it's really hard to relate to them. So I'm going to spend a few minutes at the beginning sharing why talking about smallholder farmers is really important to everyone in the room, outside of a financial perspective from an investment, but how it impacts your well-being. I'll share a little bit about what we do, and then I'll also give you a sneak peek into some of the technology that we're developing that we think is quite interesting. So the reason that we started the business is because we saw that there was a huge sort of gap in the market. So there's 570 million smallholder farming households, and they're considered to be the riskiest people in the world. Their incomes are not predictable, they're not dependable. Like Peter said, the rain doesn't come, they can't grow anything. So in turn, banks don't want to lend to them. And because banks don't lend to them, they can't invest in assets that increase their productivity, which means they have no disposable income, and the whole cycle continues. So the reason we started this business is to figure out how to improve and protect the productivity of smallholder farmers so that we can create a market that has disposable income, that they can then create a consumer market, we can sell into the market and continue to bring them up the productivity ladder. But this is important to all of you in here, because as you've probably heard all of the stats, we're going to need to produce a lot more food. By 2050, we're supposed to produce 70% more food for all of us to eat. The challenge with that is that a lot of the places that we have room to produce the food are being adversely changed by climate change. So in this year, the stat is that there's 1% fewer consumable calories in the world. You're seeing that Africa, Latin America, Asia is going to be hit with a lot of loss due to climate change, and this is where a lot of the food production is going to need to come from. This is a really bad map, and I'll explain it to you. This shows where all of the unused arable land is, so unused farmable land is in the world. This doesn't take into consideration where people live. So we see that there's a lot of farmable land in America and in Siberia, but there's a lot of people that live there. So when you strip all the livable and unlivable places in the world, Africa has 60% of the world's unused farmable land. So when we think about how do we grow enough food for all of us, we have to really think about how do we increase the productivity of smallholder farmers in Africa and look at Africa to be the breadbasket of the world. The next question I'm always asked when I talk about this is that, what about water? You need water to grow food. Africa is the only continent that has what's called an economic water scarcity, not a physical water scarcity. So we have enough groundwater underground to increase irrigation by 20 times in the continent. People just can't afford to pull it up. So you have sort of these really big macro challenges. You need to grow a lot of food. The only place to grow the food is Africa. Climate change is hurting the ability to grow food in Africa, but you have a lot of water underground. So when we think about how is it that we're going to produce enough food for us to eat, we really do have to think about improving and protecting the productivity of smallholder farmers on the continent. And to start thinking about this, you have to understand how they live. Now, how many people in this room have visited a smallholder farm in East or West or Central Africa? I thought that would be about half. Usually it's about 10% of the room who does it, but given the crowd, I thought about half would be appropriate. So for those of you who haven't, smallholder farmers live off-grid, and they generally live in rural areas. And they live on a piece of land that's about 1 to 3 acres. They farm on their land. And to make money, they generally do one of 3 things. They either sell crops, they either sell milk from their cattle, or they sell animals. Now, all 3 of these things require water. And the way that they usually get water is they take a bucket, and some of you heard me make this analogy, but they fill a bucket up with 20 liters of water, and 20 liters weighs 20 kgs, so it's like those big weight plates at the gym. And they either walk to a river or a stream or a lake, or they lower it down into what they call a shallow hand-dug well. Shallow can be 150 feet, 200 feet, I've seen 300 feet. And they lower the bucket down, and they use a pulley system like this. And the woman of the household spends 2 to 3 hours per day physically moving water to barely meet her domestic needs. So cooking, cleaning, bathing, drinking. This is a lot of time to spend not to become productive. So to grow food, they wait for the rain to come, and they practice what's called rain-fed agriculture. And like Peter said, this year we had no rain. So it's really hard for people to have predictable and dependable incomes. They're just one bad rainy season away from being completely financially destroyed. So when we think about solving the challenges that smallholder farmers face, there's absolutely no silver bullet. All of these solutions have to exist for smallholder farmers to become productive and for us to solve these big macro problems. But we think about solving these issues in a framework that we call the productivity ladder. So how do we continue to get smallholder farmers to become productive over time? And given all the challenges that I described, we see the first rung on the ladder as being solar irrigation. So a lot of people know us as a solar irrigation company. We were the first company to commercialize solar-powered irrigation in Africa. But what we quickly realized is that technology is also not a silver bullet. You need to provide services, so installation, delivery, training, agronomy support, after-sales support, all in-house. And then you also have to provide financing. So we became the first company to start financing farmers on what we call a pay-as-you-grow program. It's traditional asset financing like car companies. They pay us a deposit. They pay us the remainder over 30 months. And this AlphaMundi facility is officially the first dedicated facility for solar irrigation receivables financing in Africa. So congratulations and thank you. This is what the system looks like. It comes with a battery. You can charge phones. You can charge, you have lights. It comes with, some of them come with TVs loaded up with an agriculture TV show called Shamba Shape Up. We have some USBs sitting out on a table, 120 episodes of farming TV for all of you. I know Patricia has one. We give these to farmers to help them increase the way they consume information to help them become better farmers. This in the middle is a submersible solar water pump. It pumps water from up to 70 meters. Most farmers in Africa have water sources between 20 and 50 meters. That's a foldable solar panel for portability. Most of our customers are taking a 310-watt solar panel, so about twice that size, mounted on the roof. And we come and do the installation for them. Our farmers are generating impact in a number of different ways for themselves. They're increasing incomes generated by growing staple crops like maize and potatoes. They're increasing their yields by 30 or 100%. They're able to produce more milk. So cows need water because milk is 85 to 95% water. If you give a cow enough water, they produce 2 to 3 times more milk. And they start growing on a small kitchen garden like this. So if you take all of these numbers up, our farmers are increasing their incomes by 5 to 10 times within the first year. And that's something that we're really, really proud of. We operate in Kenya. We distribute in Zambia and Uganda and now Ethiopia. We're really excited to partner with the government and a few distributors in Ethiopia. We're running pilots in 3 West African countries, which we will choose one to launch into over the next 18 months. We're currently raising a $10 million equity round, and we just closed this receivables financing facility from AlphaMundi and Alpha. One of the things that we're really interested in going forward is figuring out how to get farmers access to the capital markets. Congratulations on the off-balance sheet financing facility, very exciting. There's a $450 billion smallholder farmer financing need. 95% of that is unmet. Bless you. And when you talk to banks, when you talk to insurance companies, everyone has the same story. There's a lack of hyperlocal, real-time farm data for us to make decisions. Insurance companies can't buy a risk if they can't see the risk. Banks think farmers are too risky, so they can't finance. And farmers don't have the right information to make real-time decisions. So what we're really excited about is leveraging our knowledge of agriculture, our relationships with our customers, to use hyperlocal sensors to get real-time data from a farm, provide advisory to farmers to de-risk them, and then use the information that we have to create risk profiles for our customers and allow banks to continue to finance. So this is a picture of what one of these sensors looks like. You have a small solar panel on the top to power it. You have soil moisture sensors, which pick up moisture, temperature, lumosity, and fertility, so you know how much fertilizer is needed. You have these little UV lights that attract pests, and there's actually a mechanism where you can listen to pests, and you know how many pests are on a farm. You have a little small piece, it looks like a little piece of glass called a distrometer, which measures rainfall, so you have hyperlocal rainfall measurements, which is really important because in Africa you have 8 times fewer weather stations than what's recommended by the World Meteorological Organization. So this data doesn't exist. So by leveraging these sensors, we will for the first time have hyperlocal real-time agricultural and weather data for farms. With this, we can provide real-time advisory to farmers. We can now address the need for financing by connecting to the capital markets. And we see this is a really big tool to help us succeed and help other companies succeed because we're finance agnostic. We just need more efficient and affordable capital to reach customers. If I were to leave you with one sort of thought, is when as investors you're looking at all of these different companies, remember that there's not one company that's going to solve these problems. We have a lot of impact. Everyone on the panel has so much impact. But without access to technology, without access to financial services, without access to markets, smallholder farmers are never going to be successful. So you need to think about end-to-end solutions, and you need to think about your portfolio in terms of combining companies to then reach scale. Thank you.
That was a great presentation. Thanks, Amir. Any questions from the audience? Paolo? It's coming.
Okay, this is going to be a really dumb question, but you must have thought about it, which is this is a lot of technology stuff, which is really cool. And I've also seen, to solve the same problem, some really low-tech things like, treadle pumps, which is still not great for the women who have to do exercise, but they're way less costly. So how do you balance out the need for tech versus, maybe lower tech solutions, which are more practical sometimes?
If you go to visit, farmers in the markets we work with, they often have a moratorium of products they don't use anymore, oftentimes a treadle pump. So there's this balance between, so much in development, people sacrifice relevance and quality of product to meet a price point. So they sacrifice specifications for price. And that is the absolute worst way to build technology. You have to start with relevance. So is it relevant for a farmer? What does a farmer want? They don't want to spend 4 hours a day on the Stairmaster. They want something where they can switch on and irrigate. Is it high quality? Will it last a long time? Low-tech products don't last a long time. And then you work on affordability through manufacturing and operational efficiencies, and then financial innovation like fintech. So we will never go to reach a price point just for quality. We happen to have the most affordable solar irrigation solution in East Africa. Didn't start like that, but at the end of the day, you have to build something that is of a high quality. Just because someone's poor, that doesn't mean they want a crappy product. You have to build something that they want to use. If you build something someone wants to use, they'll pay for it.
Another question? Yes?
Yeah, hello. What is approximately the retail price?
So we have 2 price points. We have a $500 price point and a $970 price point. People are paying us a deposit of about $89 US. And then for the larger product, they're paying us $39 US a month for 30 months. And our goal with the pricing and the way we designed it is to make sure that people are only paying us back from the increased income that they're making. So it's really important to understand that smallholder farmers make their money in a lot of different ways, like I explained. All of our farmers practice mixed farming, and their cash flows come in at different times. They have weekly cash flows, they have monthly cash flows, and they have cash flows that happen every quarter or every 6 months. So we needed to make sure that their monthly cash flows, the increase in their monthly cash flows, could manage that $39 a month.
Thank you. I think, one more question from Rosa. Yeah.
How do you reach your customers? So what's your distribution model?
So we reach customers in a number of different ways. So all of our customers, the challenge with reaching rural farmers, which is an age-old question, is that they're not organized. They are spread out. So if you look at the off-grid space, and I'm not saying we're in the off-grid space, but if you look at the off-grid space and you look at the sort of traditional solar home system market, there is really no leverage they've been able to find with how do you reach customers. It's kind of $1 per customer, and that doesn't scale. So we reach customers in a number of different ways. We have in-field sales agents. We have rural sales and service centers that serve as a point of sale. We work through distribution partners. So these are companies that finance and distribute other agricultural products or agricultural machinery. We have a telesales team. So we have a very strong digital marketing program. We're one of the top 100 Facebook pages in Kenya. Facebook gives free access to people in Kenya through 2 telcos. So we have a digital marketing team and a telesales team. And then we work with partners, and we work with, so we have a projects team that's all in Kenya. And then when we also work with dealers. So these are people that own agrovets. Outside of Kenya, we work purely with distribution partners. So there has to be sort of a mixed approach, otherwise you'll never have leverage. You can't just have one way to reach your farmers. Once they come into the company, there's one way of sort of selling to them. For reaching customers, you have to have a stacked approach, otherwise you'll never be able to scale profitably. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have a few more minutes, and I just wanted to ask a question from our panel, because very often we investors in Europe and in the US, we ask companies to tell us, why should I invest in you? And can you convince me that your business model is good enough for my money? And what terms can you offer me that I can be satisfied with my investment? But for once, I think I'd like to give the opportunity to the entrepreneurs to tell us what sort of investors you're looking for. What sort of money are you looking for? What are the terms that you think make for a good investment partnership with the investors? Maybe we can start with Samir. Yeah.
So right now, for our current funding round, we are looking for investors that can meet have 3 primary qualities. The first is that, and this is the most important to me, is we're at a phase of the business where we grew 3 times from last year. We'll continue to have this growth over the next few years. And what I tell my team all the time is that what got us from 0 to 1 is different than what's got us from 1 to 100, and will be different than what gets us from 100 to 1,000. And we really need investors who have seen this type of growth, because while I am very confident in my abilities, my team's abilities, our current investors' abilities, I can't always anticipate the risks that will come at being a company that's 10 times in size in a couple of years. From an HR perspective, from a management team perspective, from an organizational structure perspective. So really looking at an investor who has seen companies go through these phases, who can help us organize. The second is an investor that understands both East and West Africa, and the third is an investor that understands technology, both hardware and software, which is, I think, where we lack the most in our current cap table.
Thank you. Peter?
Thank you so much, Tim. We're actually just closing a round of fundraising right now. And one of the things that we're looking at with the investors that are coming on board, I think the first thing is around the technology. What we realize is that, we'll continue relying on technology to drive our business. And what we also needed is players who have a good understanding of how to take technology and scale it, either through companies that are within their ecosystem or what it is that they do internally. The second thing for us is also around retail. We have also investors who are very, very big on the retail side, because some of the principles around warehousing and logistics are things that we will need to think about moving forward, especially as you start having multi-country operations. And I think the third thing is also around what I'd call organizational complexity. what happens is that, you know, when you're a business that's maybe below 100 people, there's certain challenges that you face as an organization. But when you start getting to 500, 1,000 people in multiple locations, there's a different way which you need to start organizing the organization, and also the different competencies that you need to build internally. And you also need investors who can then help you with that journey. So again, for us, that's essentially what we were looking for. And I'm glad, at least with the round closing this week or next week, we should have those types of partners on board.
Thank you. Yeah. So we are looking for equity or convertible debt. We've had periods of growth, as you said. So in this period of growth, we have a new management team in place, and we need someone or investors that are willing to either be part of the board of directors or at least be open to have calls. And that has been our single most important decisive factor in when choosing investors. People that we can call, you know, once every 6 months or so and get their input on random things. The second thing that we would be looking for right now is people that have experience in this and that hopefully have operational efficiency. And if they don't do operational efficiency experience, but if they don't do that, they understand the perils that we are going through on the process of setting this up in the right way. Access to networking is also very important for us.
Thank you. We want to invite you to invest in Insotech to achieve 3 goals. First, to create a financial inclusion bank. Second, to be part of our lenders that promote the internationalization of our operations to another countries. Hopefully, for example, to Colombia, to promote convert the plastic bags that they use now for export the coffee to organic materials with a product called Fique. Fique is the old, 100 years ago, they used these bags. They need to come back again, and we have the model to implement this project. And third, to implement technology to our credit process, like simply, but with our old clients, because we can simplify a lot of processes in the loans with old clients. We know clients 100 years, 800 years, 8 years, 10 years, with a lot of cycles. We don't need to have the same process for all clients, but we need to develop our technology internally. And this is part of our digital transformation plan. And we need not only money, but we need partners and know-how. Okay, thank you.
So Simply is looking for a long-term debt, as I mentioned before, of $25 million. And we're looking for an investor or debt providers that can accompany us in the growth of our companies, not necessarily a 2-year loan, but perhaps a longer loan. And we're looking for an investor who can understand the importance of fintech and how we are transforming the banking industry. We strongly believe that that fintech is or financial institutions are going to become a data-driven companies. So for us, it's important to have on board an investor that understands data, not necessarily finance. Both of them are important. And very important also, very relevant to understand the local market. Colombia is not Mexico. This is important because in Mexico there are no caps of the interest rate. In Colombia there are caps of the interest rates. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that the structure of family-owned businesses in Colombia is completely different than any other country in Latin America. So that's what we're looking for.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. So in terms of history at AlphaMundi, we've invested in 10 years, $55 million. We've lost $1.5 million of these 55, and we've earned an average of 9% annual in dollars on the remaining 53. And I think one of the reasons for our success as we finance more than 40 businesses and scaled up 37 of them, and 3 of them failed, is that we believe that the investment we make in these companies actually seals a partnership with the entrepreneur and the enterprise. And a partnership, an investment partnership, is really a bit like a marriage. I've only been married 5 months, so I'm still taking tips. But I think it's really about maintaining communication in good and bad times on a very frequent basis. And also when you face a hurdle or a challenge, you agree from the very beginning that you're going to resolve it together with the entrepreneur. And I think with these 2 principles, you can really set the stage for trust. And trust is really the basis for long-term performance of an impact fund manager, I would think, as well as for the enterprises. So I want to conclude this session by thanking the entrepreneurs for traveling so far to share all these insights. The time we had does not do justice to the work that you do, but we appreciate the effort. And thank you all for your attention.